Hello.
Hello.
It's so nice to see you.
It's so good to see you.
Oh, Dave, hello.
Hi. Sorry, I was gonna
Hello.
come and have a chat with you whilst you're waiting for Ren, but my services are no longer required, so I'm gonna leave. Goodbye.
Thank you. That's very kind of
Bye,
you.
Dave.
Bye, Dave. I was like, I can't sit here and talk on my own. I can't. I just.
I love that. I could hear everything, and I was like, I could see my like save screen, and I was like, I just need to get in.
Oh no, I'm so glad you did get in. Well,
Me
I'm
too.
glad that we got in early because it's 5:30 now. So
Yes.
like, oh my gosh. So hi everyone. So I'm Helen. I run Burum Collective, and this is Ren. Ren, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Ren Navarro, and I run a company called Beer Diversity. The name is a bit of a misnomer 3 years in, but I talk about diversity and inclusion and kind of what diversity is, but I talk about it within the alcohol industry at large now. It's not just beer. Oh, and I'm based in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, no cider for you. So maybe.
No, it's still coffee. It's still coffee.
Okay.
Hi.
Me too. Ah, that's cool. Me too, but that's only because I have work like immediately after this.
Yeah.
So I'm like gonna have to go.
Yes, be responsible.
Yeah. So yeah, we're here to talk today about improving diversity, inclusion, and equality within cider. So Ren, would you be okay to just talk through I guess some of the definitions of those three words, because I know that for some people it's either something that they've heard and they're not like 100% sure on all of the different like the differences between them, or they've just not really, it's not anything they've engaged with before. Oh, and also Simon has just said pop your questions in the Q&A. We're going to just accept questions all the way through, so just fire any questions at us.
Yeah, I think there's such a static thought about diversity, inclusion, and equity. And when we talk about diversity, we've kind of been looking at it incorrectly and defining it incorrectly. So in the last year with COVID and then George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, we've really been focusing on the Black community. And then we've kind of spread it out to BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, people of color. But we haven't gone much further from that. And so diversity is really, you're talking about differences, but, diversity isn't one person. Diversity is not just the Black community. Diversity is age ranges, it's LGBTQ plus communities, it's, non-binary, it's talking about disabled communities. Like all of those pieces are parts of diversity. You can have diversity, but you don't have to have inclusion. So you can have a diverse workforce, but if those people don't feel included within that workforce, then you have failed. Think of inclusion in terms of school sports when you were younger and you had to be included in something, and how, if it was done properly, you felt welcome within that community of the Red Rover group. And that was, kind of what helped you grow in that moment. So if you didn't feel included, people, reluctantly picked you for these things. Think of it the same way. Equality and equity means that you have some equal pieces within what's happening. There is no such thing as a level playing ground or an equal playing ground, because the world, we just don't have it. And the aim is to get to as kind of as equal as we can, so people aren't left behind and left out of what they're doing. But I think that's the big piece that we're really trying to hit these days.
Yeah, 100%. Earlier this year, the Three Counties Cider and Perry Association, thank you, CraftCon organizers, they released their Cider is for Everyone, which was their statement of intent for equality, diversity, and inclusivity, and which was really cool. And it's something that we haven't really seen so far in UK cider. I think that if we're looking at what cider is like in terms of, I guess, just diversity at this point in the UK, I mean, the answer is that it's not super diverse. I think that there is like diversity in gender is growing, and like the Cider Women group do like incredible work, and it's such a lovely support network, and like that's just really fantastic. They're like brilliant. But there's not really any racial diversity, and and as far as I'm aware, there's not a massive amount of it'd be quite cool, I think, to get someone to sort of, I guess, do the numbers on this. But yeah, there's not really a massive amount of like queer representation within cider either. And I think that this is it's actually quite a good opportunity within cider, because beer and wine did what you just talked about, which is tried to make things diverse before even attempting to make things inclusive. So now they've sort of, invited a lot of people in, but then like have brought them into like quite poisonous environments, and that's really difficult. And then you have that horrible thing of people just leaving the industry because they're like, well, this is not for me, and it's such a shame, because often those people are like really integral and really important to the industry. And I think that cider is in a really great position in that if it does the work now to make the industry inclusive, then we can start to see a lot more positive change, and people will feel more comfortable to enter the industry.
Yeah, and I think that we're also focusing on it incorrectly. Everyone says, I want a diverse workforce. And you can't just start there, right? Like it's great to say that that's what you want, but that's your end game. And it's really about who is outside of your facility, who's outside of the tap room, who's outside of that farm, and why do you want them to come and pick you? I noticed someone in the comments that had complimented my shirt, like, Collective Arts, which makes cider here in Canada. That's what they're working on. It's how do you attract someone who stands outside of the building and doesn't really know what you do? And what is the concept of cider, and what do people think of when they think of cider? And it's, what's your packaging look like? Who have you spoken to create your packaging? Collective Arts has done a recent, they're connected to the arts. And so they did a recent Amplified Voices, where they were looking for people who were either highlighting BIPOC communities and LGBTQ plus communities, or were part of them as artists. And so when they put those labels on, you could find out about that person. And the label draws you in, and you say, hey, what is this? Oh, it's a cider. Okay, I'm going to try it because I like what's on the wrapper. And then, you take the next step and you look at the website, or you look at whatever, and what's the representation? And that's the piece that gets you in, because if you love it, you're going to keep going back. And if you keep going back, you're probably going to want to work there. And that's how you end up with your diverse workforce. But you have all this work to do before that piece happens.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's about sometimes thinking about, I think sometimes people worry about maybe what they're able to do, and not thinking outside the box. For example, with that like label initiative, that's you can do so much with, I guess, canon label design. You can be really smart with that in terms of, I guess, education. And it's, I guess it's not always thinking so kind of like that there's only one route for things to work. Like, and everyone has different I guess capabilities and platform. Like everyone has a different power, and I think that that's really important to remember, that like just because maybe you feel like you don't have necessarily the money or the kind of like there's always a way for you to help.
Well, and that's the thing. And I think that people always think like I have to open my wallet and I have to give money, and it's not about having to give money. It's sometimes it's about giving someone help and exposure, paid exposure, to places that they wouldn't get to. Brian was saying, like with the artistry piece, then allowing the artist to control their artwork, even after it's featured on a label. And that's the whole thing, because now that person has something for their portfolio where they can say, I designed a label, or they've used my artwork, which I'm already creating. Like I'm not specifically creating label artwork. I'm creating artwork that has ended up on a label. people read labels. What else are you doing while you're drinking? You're reading the label because you're interested in what the beverage is or what the makeup is. So you can throw on like a couple little extra pieces, and it doesn't have to be these huge pronouncements of like, we stand united and we believe in diversity and we believe in it. No, hey, like, we take this thing and we take this community, and here are things that we really loved. And I think that part of the problem that that beer, cider, and wine fall into is that people are afraid of making mistakes. And we make mistakes in everything. I mean, if you are a cider maker, you have a bad batch somewhere that you're like, oh, remember that batch of like early 2020? But you still make it. You still continue doing your thing. So when you look at diversity, inclusion, and equality, don't think of it as a like, if I mess it up, then I'm done. It's what didn't work and what did work, and the piece that worked, like, how do I build this into a bigger nugget that makes more impact?
Yeah, 100%. And also, like, I guess asking questions, like, that's such a, if you're like, oh, I think I've really messed up here, ask why and how and what you could, like, there's always going to be someone to help you have these conversations. I mean, you, for example, very much your job. Like,
yes.
You're like, hello, that's me.
That's me. It's a thing I do. But yeah, I mean, and I think that because we overthink these pieces and we think, oh, well, if I mess it up, it's going to be terrible. I mean, it's human nature to make mistakes. It's, you're curious about a lot of things. If you can tell me about 10 different apple varieties, you can tell me about community groups that are close to you that are doing things. It's the same thing. You're, like, yes, here are all these varietals, but here are these groups that do things we really dig, and here's why we want to support them. And, we forget about the youth when it comes to these things. Think of the farms, think of just growing an apple. How many people know what it takes to do that? I mean, if you're living in a spot where you're not exposed to produce of any kind, unless it's in a bag or it's on a rack, like, there's a lot for people to learn. And I think that we again put it into silos and say, like, I have to just get people who look like this. And it's like, no, like, you want to educate people and you want to get them excited about the thing you're excited about. Don't keep telling your friends about it, because your friends have heard all about it. Find someone new to tell about it. And food deserts are a thing. I mean, there are kids out there who have never seen an apple grow on a tree. Yeah. And, if they've seen an apple, it's the, like, kind of a remnant of something that they were able to obtain, second, third, fourth hand. So it's like, start broader and start thinking of who doesn't know about this and who would really love to know about it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I mean, I would never have, I guess, entered the UK cider community in the way that I have if it hadn't have been. I was just in the right place at the right time. I happened to work with someone who is really good friends with Albert Johnson, who is of Ross and Y Cider and Perry Company. And he one day came into the bar that I work in, and I asked him a question about cider, and next thing I know, he's explaining different types of yeast fermentation within cider, and I'm looking at him like, that's crazy. I didn't know cider was remotely complex. I was just like, cider's that thing I drank at university that I probably didn't want as much of. And then I just fell into it, and I think that is, a lovely little niche story, but that's not helpful in terms of trying to engage people within cider, especially, I guess, younger people or people of minority groups. I mean, so looking at cider as it is right now in the UK and kind of asking the question of why is it not super diverse, I think that it does come down to the problem of it being such a rural business. And I think there's a lot of, like, the countryside is beautiful, but, like, there's less travel links, and there's so unfortunately we don't have the census results yet of 2021, but in 2011 the, like, 3 counties average 96.4% of people living in the 3 counties are white. So, like, you're kind of, like, especially in terms of your racial diversity, like, that's never gonna kind of, like change in that way in terms of trying to get people involved and actively involved in cider if all of the people of sort of more minority groups live out in the cities. And then also, I mean, like I wrote down in my notes, young people can't afford homes, let alone orchards, which I think is something we should think about.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I think that there's also this notion of you have to have a lot of money in order to make these things happen. And I think that, yeah, you have to have money. However, who is passing on their knowledge? Who's passing on the, you know, the education? And I think that the other part that's forgotten is if I go and buy your cider, I can travel with it. So where am I taking it to? So even if those counties are 96, 97% white, who's buying it and who's taking it into places? And like, are we taking migrant workers into consideration? Because, you know, out this way. So I'm about an hour and a half outside of Toronto. So there's farmland out here. And at certain points of the year, suddenly I'm not the only Black person out here. And it's, you know, what are the migrant workers? How are we putting them within this framework? Because it's great to say that this is a family-owned orchard and, you know, we've worked the land for 200 years, but there's only 4 of you and you have 120 acres of land. Like, who's really doing it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think, again, it's that situation of we need to look at the power that people do have. So what can you do with the sort of resources and platform you have to help that situation? And I think so. I mean, we've seen something really cool happen actually in the past 2 years with cider making it out slightly more into cities with the work of Dick and Kath from Cider Buzz, formerly Cider Buzz. Now they're just fully doing Manchester Cider Club, but they were quite literally taking cider and just putting it in front of people because they're like, we need to get cider into cities because at the moment it is only in the countryside. And I guess, and that was about, again, that kind of like expanding an audience.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing. Like we need to kind of look at it in that way as well. I think that was a really important thing. And the other thing that we need to look at as well is, you know, if you're a cidery, and one of the problems that I see that comes up quite a bit is, you know, having a surplus of fruit, you know, look up like who is the nearest like urban cidery to you, and kind of think about, you know, is there a way that we can work with that person that way that doesn't lose, they like don't lose out as well. Like I think there are ways for you to help whilst still being whilst still you know, sorry, I probably lost my train of thought. My brain just was like, bye.
Yeah, the cat will do that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think just looking at what it is that you could maybe do with the, you know, with the power that you have. I also have been thinking a lot about, you know, there's a lot of orchards around in the UK, and sometimes like you can drive through Herefordshire and you're like, who owns that? Is no one making cider out of that? Like what's happening over here? Like, and I think starting to put time and money, I think, into things like community orchards, and like, because as I said, like it's expensive and young people can't, you know, go out and buy orchards, but imagine how incredible it could be if there was a way in which you could do it as a group of people as opposed to just, you know.
Yeah. And I think too, it's, you know, just getting the word out there. Like there was this huge influx for years of like, learn to brew beer and like, let's teach you that you can make it in your own kitchen. And there was for a period of time where everyone was like, I'm making my own cider. And it was a thing. And I think we have to get back to that. And I think, again, it's who do we talk to and how do we talk to them? and explaining to someone that, yes, if you want to be a large facility or you want to do it like, like big scale, you have to have this orchard. But if you want to start getting into it, here's how you make it at home, and just start with these basics. Because again, it's, it's that notion of like, I want a diverse workforce. Well, you don't start there. And, I want a diverse owned orchard. You don't start there. Like that's kind of your like end goal. I mean, it always continues and it never really ends, but you have to think of how do I get these next generations and these people who are underrepresented interested in these things that mean a lot to me and to my family and to like my friends. And education is the first way. Education and awareness. If I don't know you exist, it doesn't matter if you're a wonderful person. It doesn't matter if you're inclusive, and it doesn't matter if you're welcoming, because I don't know you're there. So how do you reach out, and who are you talking to, and why are you talking to them? I mean, like, think about it. You're taking an apple or you're taking a pear and you're turning it into something. And I mean, there's some fantastic science behind that. And so think of kids who, again, are underrepresented, who are going into the sciences thinking, I'm going to work in a laboratory for, Pfizer or whatever. And I never knew that I could take science and put it into cider and understand these other things and understand yeast. And I mean, there's so many stories in beer of people of color and Black people who are like, oh yeah, I was doing sciences where I was just like playing with beakers. And now, I learned I could do something with beer, and here I am. And we make the assumption that everyone knows that this translates into this, when not everyone knows. So I think that it's, again, just access points and enlightening people and educating.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that does seem to be a problem, especially in the UK, of the drinks industry in general, is that you don't know that you can. You're basically, you grow up thinking if you end up working in a bar, there's something wrong with you.
Right.
I work in a bar, and like and you don't kind of see all the work. Like, it's almost like you're not seeing the input into the bar. You're not seeing all of the reason that you're there. Like, it's just that output instead. So I think that is generally, I think the drinks industry needs to be taken more seriously, and that's definitely something that, like, with Burum, like, further down the line, we've sort of talked about, freshers fairs and all that kind of stuff. But I think before that can also happen, so these cider education is really important. I know that 3 counties did talk about in their statement that they would like to start putting money into education bursaries and like internships as well, which is something that, I mean, hopefully for people who are able to do this, it's like just thinking about everything, like, just because you're offering something, for example, if you were saying, hey, you can come and do a paid internship with me, a person in the city looks at it and is like, oh, cool, that's for, the hardest, might be like 3 months. Where are they going to stay? How are they going to pay for, like, and I know it's like, I think it's thinking about all of those elements. Don't just kind of assume that someone is able to, because it's not, I guess, then an accessible internship or sort of scholarship in that way, because they need to be able to. And again, and it's quite common, I found, with scholarships, they might have the course fees paid for, but like none of the books, and then they win the scholarship and then they can't actually do the course because
because they can't afford it. And I think that those are big pieces of it. But I think that the first thing to do, for those of you who are listening, stop apologizing for being primarily white, because it's like, we already know. We know that cider and the beer and that wine are really white facing, and that is what it is. Don't apologize. We know. Use that privilege and use it to better things and to educate and to get those things out. Because if you just stand there and apologize, like, nothing changes. You've just said, sorry, we're very white. Cool. I don't know what that's going to change. And it also, when you put it out there, people say, oh, well, then that is telling me that you understand that you are not approachable. and that it will continue to be this way, and that you're just saying, well, sorry, it's kind of the way it is. And it's just stop. Just take a look around and see, because, you know, as we're talking about diversity, it isn't just about color. It is about, you know, disabled and LGBTQ plus, and what's your age range? Like, what is cider known, you know, for that age? Like, who is currently drinking your cider? If you're skewing older, is that because those are the people who can afford to come out to your spaces? Then how is it accessible in multiple ways for those from the ages of, you know, 18, 19 to say 34, if that's what you have to focus on? So it's really start taking at looks of what this diversity means. Is it, you know, is it socioeconomic? Is it, you know, white trans men aren't seen in cider, or white trans women aren't seen in cider? Like, start breaking it out and stop just saying it has to be people of color and it has to be this. Because intersectionality also falls into all of that. And that is part of the diversity of what makes us us. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, I mean, there's a lot to look at, but it's really what you're looking for are people who don't look like you. Yeah. And people who aren't you, right? So if you know, you have a ton of white straight men, then that is not the diversity you're looking to expand upon.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, but also if that is your like echo chamber, you're not going to learn anything too. Like, yeah, you need to, I guess, making sure that you're listening and learning as well. Like, it's and I know that it can be like, I guess, quite a big thing to start getting your head around, and especially if maybe you're a bit older and like there's a lot of new terminology kicking around. I know, like, you know, like I identify as non-binary, and I know that blows people's minds because they're like, I do not understand, and that's fine. Ask me about it. Like, not everyone feels the same way, but like I am very open about stuff like that. I'm like, no, you can talk.
But I think jumping off of that to, you know, to start small. Don't wake up and say, okay, we're gonna hire X number of people by this point, because people, you can't quantify and you can't say I have a quota of. You know, in your email signatures, just put your pronouns, right? Like, and this is a really simple thing. And for you, who, you know, I mean, I like, my pronouns are she, her, so I don't think about it, but Helen doesn't think about it. But for that kid who has emailed you to find out some info, who is non-binary and is still struggling with it, once you say your pronouns, you are just saying, here it is. There's, you know, tell me who you are, because you're safe here and I am welcoming. And if you put it, you have to follow it up. You can't be like, oh, non-binary, that's weird, get out of here. This is your accountability model. And, you know, if you're putting it, you're saying, I'm saying who I am, so you can say who you are, because you're welcome here. And honestly, it will mean nothing to you. You will forget about it. It will make a huge impact for someone. And that's what you want. And it will cost you $0, and it will take you 30 seconds if you got distracted on typing halfway through. So it's, you know, again, like these little baby steps, if we all take them together, now we're you know, speed walking down the street, because we're all making these changes. And it doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be really complicated. Yeah,
definitely. And I think even so, looking at some of the, I guess, smaller things, especially with, you know, in regards to, okay, so maybe you're not a cider maker, or if you know, own a pub or a bar, or just even from your business, I think being visibly supportive of minority groups is like first and foremost the best thing that you can do. And like things like that is such easy like wins on that perspective, because you don't have to have lots of money to do things like that. And like social media is your friend. I know that social media terrifies some people, but like it is incredible, and you will be able to do way more with your, like, a lot of people want look for businesses' social media profiles, because it says a lot about that business. So
yeah. And I think that saying that and doing the social media aspect, also you're accessing people who aren't in your backyard.
Exactly.
Right. So if we're back to that whole, like, you're in a county where it takes me too long to travel to, but you're making these amazing statements, and I feel this like sense of welcoming, and I feel that, you know, I would be safe if I went there. If I can't make it, I might tell a friend about it.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest piece, because what you want is people to believe it and see it in some way, and then they become almost your unpaid brand ambassadors, because now they say, here are the places that I pick. And, you know, I didn't throw this sweater on by accident. Like, this is a place that I support, and, you know, because of whatever they do. And so it's these really simple moments. And don't think of, well, I don't want to show my team because we're not diverse. Well, what is the diversity again, right? So again, you have to think of who's your team? What are they made up of? What are their beliefs? Again, what do they support? What are the things that they're really passionate about? Because you can talk about those things on social media. It's, you know, I mean, it's a pandemic. We're all on our phones. We're all on the internet. Like, tell me a story. Tell me why you're different, and you're the place that I want to go to as a Black queer woman. And it doesn't have to be a big crazy story.
No, not at all. And I also think people need to also remember that one of the things about, especially again, younger people don't have as much money, which means that, like, you're gonna have to do a little bit more work to get people to say, hey, actually, that's the place that I'm going to visit this year. You know, like, that's such a big thing. It's not just, you can't rely on, I've sort of said this a few times about things like when you're in a bar, like working as a bartender, and someone comes up to the bar, and you want to get that first interaction right, because that might be the only drink that they can afford to drink. Like, it's a similar thing. You kind of want to make sure that that person is, like, happy and comfortable within your space, which is also, I guess, going on to the sort of pubs and tap room thing. I mean, you need to start thinking about the people that you have in your sort of bars and tap rooms, and, like, what kind of language are they using? Are there consequences for people who are using discriminatory language? Will there be people who will feel safe to be in your bar? Because it can just, you know, you go somewhere and you could be the last time you ever go, because you're like, cool, that was gross, I don't want to go back there, because, you know, someone was using homophobic language and no one called them out on it. Like, that is such a, I mean, I've been there. It's rubbish, because then it means that you're just like, well, I'm not going to go back to that bar, because that bar, like, team don't care about me or anyone else like me.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, when we talk about the accountability piece, it's like, if you already have a code of conduct, you're not expanding it by much. No. And, you know, you're already saying that, you know, there's a lot of talk of, like, you know, we're like family. What kind of family are you? Are you highly dysfunctional? Are you the family who's, like, trying to learn things? Are you the family who's, like, kind of in between, and, like, we have our moments, but we're working on it? Like, think of the family that, you know, you want to present for what you're doing and who you are. And yeah, if someone goes in and they say, you know what, I have enough to get 2 drinks and that's it. What is it? You know, what are you sending them away with, and how's that feeling? And, you know, and again, when we're talking about cider, just in general, like, what terminology are you using? Are you using jargon that someone who is not part of that will never understand? Because then that also is a barrier to entry. If I have no idea what you're talking about, and you keep saying Perry, but you say it in a way that I should know what you're talking about, well, then I walk away feeling stupid, and I say, okay, I don't want to do this. You know, and I don't want to learn about it, so I'm just going to go back to my loggers, and that'll be it. So it's, think of how you explain things to people who aren't the person that you normally would see, you know, drinking it or interacting with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting, actually, because if you were to start looking at, you know, some of the things that we've just talked about, a lot of that actually is very similar. So there's a sort of movement in the UK called Rethink Cider, which is about basically trying to, again, expand cider's audience, and actually all of the things that they would like to achieve like inclusivity and diversity could happen within that change. Like there's not a massive amount, like trying to like make sure that we've got you know, a sort of more structure and like educational understanding of cider, like and more accessibility, and it being in more urban spaces, and sort of, you know, the supporting of things like urban orchards, like all of that is so like it's the same like want list basically.
Yeah.
So like I think if people are thinking about that, but just considering how you're tying that in, like it could be, it's not actually, I guess, as much of a sticky situation as things like beer and wine, because you're kind of going off like building up, as opposed to having to like go back and fix things further down, like which is, I mean, yeah, which is a fantastic I think situation to be in. Yeah, I think not overthinking it. It's that fantastic balance of don't overthink it, but do think about it.
But I agree, because I think that, you know, the tendency to overthink it because we want it to be perfect and we want it to be like super shiny for everyone. And it's like, you know, think of when you first opened your cider, like you were just kind of like, don't look over here yet. Like we hope it's going to look like this. It's the same thing. And, you know, and again, just thinking about the like easy things that you can do, and you know, what's your language around describing your drinks? Are you referring to things that people in certain socioeconomic statuses will understand? Others are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What are your labels looking like? And this is not a call to revamp labels. If you have a very classic label and it works for you, by all means keep doing it. But is there space for you to put like a little extra blurb about something? If there is, then do it, right? And again, these aren't like stop what you're doing, slam on the brakes, scrap it all and start over again. It's really just about little tweaks, and not every little tweak will work for you, but do small pieces, and do small pieces that will kind of be able to be out there, that someone says, oh, hey, that's different. I don't remember seeing that before, and I'm curious and I want to check it out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it all goes back to just getting the product into people's hands, because cider itself as a product, I think, is exceptionally accessible in the way that like it tastes. Like it's just one of those drinks that is quite like people, it's almost like it's one of those everyone's palates just kind of get along with it. It's not as you know, it's not as an intense situation as like your you know, really hoppy beer for the first time you ever drink that and your palate's like, this, what is happening? And I think and that's the thing, and especially like for a lot of people in the UK, cider was like the first drink they had as a teenager, because you were like, beer's gross, but cider's great, and wine is also disgusting. Like, whereas, and then people just sort of fall out of it because they're like, oh, it's for teenagers. I think people, again, it's like getting people to understand the cider that you're making, which is different and isn't like that. And yeah, I guess how you are doing that, and whether you're doing what Dick and Kath did, which was quite literally just go to people and give them cider and be like, you should do this, which I think is still my favorite thing. And I've been
so good.
trying to do a similar fight over in Cardiff, but I think that is like, as soon as you can start getting the product into people's hands, it's like everything else will follow.
Yeah, and I think that people understanding that is something you've made, like that you can name the person who makes it, because you know, here I think that cider is having this like amazing resurgence in the last couple of years, but there was always this period of time where it was made by large corporations. So you're just like, it's too sweet. I always have to have it with ice. It's, you know, if it's not iced and like slightly watery, it's too whatever. And now there's, you know, there are real people making cider, and it turns out that they've always been doing it, but the big corporations kind of stood in front and said, this is what you'll drink. And now it's like, oh, there's an art to it.
Yeah.
And so talking about the artistry of it also, like that is a piece that you can add when you talk about it, because artistry and the notion of creating something is universally known.
Yeah.
And I think that again, we forget about that, you know, highlighting like the land and explaining it to people who may never get out to see the land, but that they also have access to make that product in a small batch on their own to see how it works. I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think that people, the people in UK Cider are just so warm and friendly, and like that's been a really wonderful, like the community that I've kind of found myself in has been really brilliant. And I think that like I want other people to know about that. I'm like, no, and like you're kind of meeting people and you're like, oh, like it's so weird because I just thought that it was I thought that cider was something else, and it's not.
Yeah.
And like, and I thought that it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And it is. And yeah, I think it's just about people putting themselves out there 100% and kind of don't just wait for people to come to you.
Well, and that's the big piece. I mean, if you want to wait for someone to come to you, you could be waiting for a very long time, because again, that whole thing about, do people know you exist? And if they do not know that you exist, how do you get them to know? And in this case, it's social media, and it's who you interact with and how you talk to them. And again, don't apologize for being a white-owned business. Show that you are connected to your community. Show who you're working with. Do you have migrant workers? Talk about them. It's amazing how in wineries, I mean, there's a bazillion out here because we have amazing land in Ontario. And I can think of 3 wineries that talk about their migrant workers, and the rest of them are just like, magically, we have grapes. And it's like, who did it? Like, even if you just talk about it, I mean, there's every so often there's pictures and they're like, thanks to our team, not thanks to our migrant workers, thanks to our team, we're able to bring you blah, 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 blah. So if you are a place that does that, acknowledge, because we all know that you did not do it on your own. Yeah. Because you would be starting now, right? Yeah. Like it'd be like 1 apple, yeah, 2, like, and I think that it's just because it is the norm, and those who are in the know take it for granted, doesn't mean, once again, that those who are outside understand it or know it. Yeah. And that is your moment to educate, and that is your moment to acknowledge and to say that these are people who help us make what you love.
Yeah, definitely. I also think that, using that, like you can celebrate that element of pressing season. Like it's such a big part of it. A lot of people don't even realize that you press once a year. Like people don't, like, I didn't know that. I was like, why aren't people, I remember going to an orchard and being like, there's no apples, what's happening? And it's like, because it's a certain, but you don't know that, because again, it's about having that access to education and kind of and like you might think, wow, this piece of this post for social media is going to be really boring. It's not boring. It's really interesting, because there's always going to be someone that doesn't know, and
and think about it. I mean, if you reach one person who didn't know, and you reach the right person who didn't know, and they turn around and say, did you guys know this? Yes. And it just spreads, right? Exactly. Like learned like a few years ago about this like once a year thing, and I was same thing. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I thought you would just do it, because again, I don't even understand how apples grow. Like I'm such a city kid. But like to have someone take the time and like explain it and be like, this is how it is. And like, I've seen apple trees in walk-in fridges and been like, why are they here? And they're like, oh, well, this is the time of year that we plant them. And like, hi, if you're watching me, I'm telling you the story of what you already know, and I think it's fascinating. Like, so all you need is one person to be like, I had no idea, and now I'm going to run off and tell a bunch of people, and now they're going to come back and talk to other people, and they're going to want to talk to you about it. And so don't think that you have to reach 20,000 people with one story. just reach a couple people and let them run with the fascination of it. And then that will be the success for you. And it'll be success for them, because that could be the one person who becomes the next, I don't know, like, you know, Indonesian trans cider maker. But like, it's, you know, and I think that when you're in the middle of it, it's really easy to not look around and to just say, well, you know, who's going to care about this? And it's like, it's your everyday.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are going to be fascinated.
100%. I had someone, I actually shared, so Dower Cider, who are a cidery, urban cidery up in Scotland, they posted this amazing picture yesterday of like a discovery apple as it's whole, and then also cut in half, because they've got this beautiful, like, they're like pink and inside, and then like white in the center, but like they look insane. So I just like shared it to my story, because I was like, that's super cool. And I had so many people be like, oh my gosh, what is that? And I was like, that is a cider apple. It's called Discovery. You should drink cider. Like, it's so easy. Like, people immediately are like, what? I want to hear more about that.
So post all your nerdy things, because honestly, like, and also interact with people that you don't think would care. I mean, it's, you know, every so often, like, tag a beer person, tag a wine person, and start that kind of relationship. I mean, I've started, you know, I've always like quietly drank cider, but same thing. I was like, no one cares. And the second you post it, suddenly there's a bunch of people who are like, ooh, what is that?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and I want to talk to cider makers, and I want to learn, and I want to like explain it to friends and get them, because if you connect with someone else, again, they become your brand ambassador, and they're the ones who are like, it's, you know, it's a really cool place. It's family run. They're like queer friendly. They're open to this. They work with this community. Oh, and by the way, their cider's really great. Like, you don't want it that people are like, their cider's great, I don't know anything else about them. You want these connections where that's how you build relationships, right? Like, there's that full, let's talk about it, and let's learn, and here's my accountability, here are what my values are, here's what I'm about. Oh, and by the way, drink this, you're really going to love it. And I think that, you know, again, flipping it. So you want a diverse workforce, that's your last thing, flip it. If you want people to come and talk to you, just be really great, and then be like, by the way, here's my awesome cider.
Exactly. So we've got about 15 around minutes left. If anyone has any questions, please shoot them into the chat, or also, I don't know, but I feel like people can, if they want, they can ask in person. I feel like there's a thing where you're like, hello, I would like to ask a question. So please do that if you want to. As we saw, Gabe appeared earlier, so I guess you can do that. Someone can do that. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, yes, please feel free to shoot them over. Yeah, most of the chat has been some cool like orchard initiatives as well, that people have highlighted, which is really amazing. And also, yes, the Three County Cider and Perry Association have a bursary for new cider makers as well, which is really cool. And people should. I think maybe they've closed, but they might not. They might still be taking applications.
Oh, thanks, Mark. There's a really nice comment from Mark about not expecting a talk of this kind, and he quite liked it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So, you know, as Helen goes through, I think that it's when you're looking at diversity and inclusion and equality, take out the word diversity and think of people who are underrepresented, because then it opens it up so much more for you. And again, that's, you know, you can have someone white who has some intersectionality that makes them underrepresented. So it makes it a little easier, and it's not so daunting. I think that the word diversity is heavy. It's so heavy, and it's so daunting. And I feel like when people get it wrong, they walk away from it. Just take a look at who's around you, and take a look at who you're interacting with, and take a look at who you wish you interacted with that was around you.
Yeah. Oh, Dave has just said that the bursary is running for a few years, so please follow the link and contact us. Excellent.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, and Dick also said, I believe there'll be a big growth of urban farms and orchards in the next few years, which is awesome. The Northern Roots Initiative is developing a large farm with orchards in multicultural Oldham, which was formerly a industrial wasteland. Well, that's really cool.
That's cool.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Dick. That's super, super cool. Yeah, I think that kind of level of engagement with I guess, urban cideries, and when I talk about people, I guess, putting more time and attention into urban cideries, I'm not for 1 minute saying we should forget about the people, like, I guess, doing the work on the land. Like, that's not at all what I'm saying. But I think that in terms of trying to help people do something where that level of education isn't necessarily out there, and like reaching out to those people and saying, hey, do you need a hand with it? Like, even just like a bit of education. I just sat in the talk about growing orchards in strange spaces, and they talked about the fact that basically it was a talk on these are all of the mistakes that I made, and I was like, this could be like some kind of, I was like, you could be a consultant on that, like just being like, don't do that, you'll regret it, like do it like that, like, do you know what I mean? I was like, there is, but I think as soon as there is more that is the one thing I think that beer and wine have kind of got successfully, is there is this element of like structure, and there's like how-tos for like everything. There's so much information out there in that way.
Yeah, but I feel like the mistakes are the same. So the information's out there, but there's no directional arrow on how to get to that info to find out what the mistakes are. And you have to be in the know. And I think that kind of putting some of that out there a little more public facing, because right now we keep it so industry specific, and we say, if you're doing this thing, like follow this and read this and watch this thing. And some of that, people find it daunting, and they say, I can't start this because I can't do these things. Whereas in this bubble, people are saying, oh, actually you can do it because all you need is this and this to start. And if we put some of that out front and say, if you try this, this may work out for you, and maybe one day you'll be leading this industry talk. And I think that beer is finally kind of getting to that point where they do drop a few nuggets, but we just all end up screaming in the void. But I think that it's also, as we hold off on things, and so as we're working on things, be it a diversity initiative or something dealing with underrepresented peoples, we hold on to it until it's perfect. It's never going to be perfect. You're dealing with humans, which means you're dealing with like rabid squirrels. You've got them together for a few minutes, it looks great, you turn your back, they're all gone. And so people say, like, I don't want to put this out into the public until it's 80% done or 90% done. Well, it's never going to get there. Yeah. But if you tell people that you're working on these things and that you're making these positive changes or you're making these attempts, then people want to watch and they want to see what happens, and they're interested, because that will get back to them and that will speak to what they need to see or need to learn from you. So, and again, you don't have to put out everything like, hey, we're working on this thing. But talk about the things that make a lot of sense. Yeah. And if you're talking about making cider more accessible, and here are the ways that we're planning, put it out there. Because again, these are groups of people who may not be connected to you now, who will find out about it because someone will talk about it on social media, and they'll say, oh, I'm interested and I want to watch what happens.
Yeah.
So don't hold on to it until you think it's perfect, because then you'll never release it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's been something that I've found with Burum Collective. We've very much taken everything in stages. Like, there is, if people say to me, oh, what do you want to do with it? I'm like, everything. I want to do everything with it. I want to help. I want to do everything I possibly can. Yeah. But like, that is like, if I was waiting until it was fully formed to then, like, I mean, you wouldn't know about it, nothing would get done. But I think that level of communication with people and being like, and saying, hey, this is something that we're working on, and kind of take it in stages, and that's fine. Like, no one expects you to have all of the answers and also fully understand everything at once. Very much just, if you just sort of just start moving, otherwise you're just going to stand there.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, you know, I just noticed Elizabeth was asking about changing labeling to reflect those they want to encourage. How do we prevent it from being seen as tokenism? Don't do it once.
Yeah.
If you only do it once, it is tokenism. And the first time you do it, it will be a big change. So people will kind of do the like, what are you doing? How do you back it up? Is it another label? Is it a statement on your website? Is it a public statement somewhere? It needs to go from just that piece into something else. If you leave it there, that is tokenism. So just think of what your next steps are. And, you know, it doesn't have to be another label, and it doesn't have to be that you do it every month, because it's the other thing people fall into. They say, oh, I got to flood it with like, we just did 8 new labels, and they're like, bang, there it is. And then they're gone. You can spread it out, because when you do the first one, that's kind of the meerkat reaction. Everyone kind of stands up and looks to see what you're doing. So how do you follow it up?
Yeah. And I also think that you will get, you know, that there's always, so the people that also often like to shout about tokenism are often people that aren't actually doing anything themselves.
Yeah.
And that is a common, I mean, we've seen this. I think Lily Waite just actually wrote a piece and talked about that very specifically.
Yes.
Like, it's fine. I guess just have like courage in your conviction. Like, just believe. If you know that what you're doing is a good thing, then you're fine. I think that that's really important to remember, that there's always going to be someone to accuse you of.
Well, exactly it. And you know, and what you're doing, if you believe in it and you stand behind it, it will show as you continue to do things. And the second someone stands up and says that's terrible, well, then that's your opportunity to have a conversation with them, not to say, okay, you're right, and rip off all the labels and that's it, we're not doing it anymore. My mom always said, you're not doing it right if everyone loves you. Someone has to be mad at you, because that is a challenge. That's what challenges you to make sure that what you put out has real meaning, and you know, and is reaching the people that you want to reach. So if you got haters, you got haters. It means you're doing it right.
100%.
Everyone hates it, and you're doing it completely wrong.
Yeah. Definitely. That's also something to think about.
But I mean, you'll know.
Yeah, definitely. I think if there's any more questions, we've got like a few more minutes left. But if not, then that might be everything. I don't know.
Absolutely great. And I did see that my website got put in the chat. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Because of technology, I can consult anywhere. So if you need anything, please feel free. But
and
yeah,
your cat
I think
will be there to assist.
Oh, for sure.
I'm honestly, my cat is sat upstairs just looking at me, and I'm like, the fact that she hasn't come, I'm shocked. I don't understand.
The second the setup starts, my cat's like, hello.
Yeah. Hi, I'm a professor, and I'm here to speak. No, 100. I'm also something that that we have kind of been able to do with Burum Collective is quite literally just be, you know, a sounding board for people. Like, if you have any questions about anything, and about how, if you're like, oh, I'm not 100% sure like exactly what it is that I can do, or even if you're like, oh, I want to link up with that person, I want to link up with that, like, just, you know, never be afraid to shoot us messages. We just want to help. So yeah, awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
That's great.
I don't know how this ends, because I don't understand that. I'm like, I've spent ages with my heart. Technology is your friend. No, it's not. I don't understand how any of this works.
Amazing.
So, oh, Albert, you can just click leave when you've had enough.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you so much for this. This was so great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. It was like a pleasure. And I was going to say at the start, actually, it's a pretty crazy thing. I mean, like this time last year, I was just thought, like, I was just watching you on social media and I was like, Ren is the coolest person in the world. So this is crazy. Like, this is a big moment for me. Yeah, this is very cool. Didn't know
You're
this
the coolest person I know. So it's
stop it. I love that this is being recorded as well. I hope they keep this in.
Yeah. But yeah, this was fantastic. Everyone enjoy the rest of the conference, and thanks so much for having me all the way from Canada. Big time. And make sure you all tune into the Cider Women talk tomorrow, because also Lily Waite's going to be there, which is class. So it's going to be amazing. All right. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, friends. Bye.